Hello everyone, in this video I will show you how to create a Minecraft style pause menu. In this tutorial I will use the material from the previous part of the Minecraft tutorial. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can go to it by the link in the description or by the hint in the upper right corner. Have a pleasant viewing. First of all, we need to rename our current scene to menu and create a new one which we will call game and which will use the pause menu. Now let's go back to menu, copy the canvas, music and sound controllers and move it all into a new scene for further editing. Now go to the background, delete the image and change the color so that when we pause, our menu can stand out. We also need to change the position and type of buttons that we now have. In the first position, we will place the back to game button. To do this, take the load level button, rename it, and move it to the very top. The second button will be the button for going to the settings menu. The third will be the generation of new level. And for the fourth button, you need to duplicate the first one, rename it and move it to the very bottom, separating it little from the rest. This will be the button to go to the main menu. Looks great! It remains only to replace the logo with a small inscription Game Menu. To do this, we can copy the text from the button, bind it to the top of the screen and move it a little. And now we need to deal with its functionality, since at the moment of all the buttons, only the transition to the settings menu works. First of all, we need to switch between scenes, for which we will use the Unity Engine.Scenes Management library, which must be included in the beginning of the script. We will also check the label variable for the change text function. If the value is null, we will not change the text, so that nothing falls in the pause menu because the inscription is not there. For the buttons, we will use the load level function that we created last time. Let's make it take the level index and ask Scene Manager to load the level of this index. The new level function can be removed, since we will now use load level instead. In order to understand what index the scene has, we must first add it to build settings. Let's start with the menu, go to the scene, and in the file menu, select build settings, after which you need to click add open scenes. As you can see, the menu is located at index 0. Do the same with the game scene and get index 1 for it. And now we need to apply the function to our buttons. Add a new item to onClick, which we will call the load level function with index 0. And in the scene with the menu, hand the load level call with index 1 on the generate new level button, and check the operation of the function. Unity does its job well, and loads the scenes one at a time. Great, that's all we wanted. You can also make it so that by clicking on the generate new level button in the scene with the game, the loading of the scene is called again. Let's take care of the back to the game button. It should hide our pause menu. To do this, it's enough to turn off the canvas component of the object with the same name to make the menu disappear. And this is what we will do now. Create a canvas variable to the back to the game function. When calling it, we will change the value of the enabled variable to the opposite. But, after all, we still need to call the menu after we have hidden it. We do this by pressing the escape key. Moreover, we need to check for pressing as often as possible, so as not to miss the moment of pressing. For such actions, Unity uses the update function, which the engine calls almost constantly. In order to check whether the user pressed a certain key, we call the getKeyDown function of the input object and pass the code of the required key there. And, if the player still pressed it, hide not only the menu, but also exit the settings menu, so that later it won't open immediately. But we don't want the check to be done in the main menu, so let's make the variable isPauseMenu and set it to false right away. And in update, we will check the key only if the pause menu variable is true. Let's go to Unity, check the isPauseMenu checkbox, and move the canvas component to the appropriate variable. Also turn it off, so the menu is not shown at the beginning. In addition, not forget about the button, on which you also need to put the created function. Excellent! The menu appears and disappears, all buttons work. But if we change the audio settings in the main menu, they will not apply to the game scene. We need to fix that. To do this, go to the volume change function and slightly change it. We need to somehow transfer information between scenes in Unity. For such needs, you can use player prefs and store it for a very long time. At the end of the function, call the setFloat function of the player prefs and write there the music volume value using the music volume key. We will do the same for sounds. We also need to restore the recorded values when restarting the game or when moving into another scene. To do this, first we will put the change in the text into the new function, so that later when the game is loaded, the menu will adjust to the settings. It remains only to check in the start function where the values we need have been written. And, if this happens, change the sound of the controllers and change text on the buttons. Super! Now, finally, we can see what we got. Excellent! We now have a pause menu just like in early versions of Minecraft. Well, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you for watching, and if you like this tutorial, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, where there will be many more interesting things. I will see you in the next video.